Hello, my beautiful cherubs. You know, I love many things upon this floating blue spaceball that we call home, including but not limited to dinosaurs, sharks, dragons, turtles of the ninja variety, Transformers, the X-Men, both 90s and Evolution, don't judge me, and all the classic monsters Xenomorphs, Predator, Terminator, Kong, Big G, and for the purpose of this video, I like zombies, snakes, and Taylor Swift, giving us the precedent Super Mega Taylor Zombie and Snake. Okay, that needs some workshopping. But I love Taylor for her music, but also because she reflects my sensibilities when it comes to social interactions.
Like a party for all the songwriters on that song.
Really?
Yeah, because it would just be me.
Now, the plan was to make a zombie Taylor Swift as per the music video for Look What You Made Me Do. But after polling my viewers, I knew we had to do something more. So we're gonna throw a snake in to balance the scales.
It was a pun.
You've watched me mark out the proportions of the face, and I'm now adding in extra high cheekbones and brow ridgelines, as zombies are, for reasons unknown to me, historically lean. She does, however, look a little like a Magneto helmet at the moment, but I assure you, it all comes together once we channel our inner Swiftie and shake it.
Really?
But no, seriously, I'll show you how it's done. Okay, so I'll begin roughly by blending in the brows and the cheeks before adding in the eyelids. Fun fact, eyelids are the only layer of skin with no subcutaneous fat. I'll then use a sharp-shaped shaper to impress in the classic zombie. My skin is collapsing around my septum, but I kinda like it, look. I can then open up the mouth and carve out the jawline. Once the jawline is popstar shapely, I'll add in a couple of far too fluffy caterpillar eyebrows and an upper lip, which I enjoyed far too much as a cartoon Frenchman's mustache.
Chowder.
It's chowder. Say it right.
As an architect and definitely not a sculptor, I tend to make two heads. A, for practice, and B, I'm almost always guaranteed to make my heads too big. I think this is because I tend to veer toward additive forms rather than subtractives when it comes to defining the facial features. And after a nerve-wracking game of eeny meeny miny mo, I select the head most fit for purpose and sketch out the body with the usual head reference proportions. And if you want to learn more about that, then go check out my Yumi and the Nightmare Painter video, because not a lot of people did, and it's pretty cool. And that's a raging endorsement from me. I'm not easily pleased.
Liar!
And with that all sketched out, I can draw an armature, which I can then make in the usual way of bending and clipping some thick steel wire and wrapping it in jewelry wire for something extra for the clay to adhere to. I'm also going to score the body with the cutting part of my pliers before laying down my initial layer of clay. I can cover the body in a rough layer of medium Sculpey and give the form a general 30-something-year-old lady body shape. I'll add a couple of lats and give the upper body some shape before moving on to that dump truck. Unfortunately, Taylor is not famed for being double C thick. Miss Swift.
You have no ass.
Which leads me to respond accordingly before adding two tasteful sweater puppies. I'll squish these into place in a way that makes me hope that Toy Story is not a real thing. I'll give her her first mouth, and then I'm going to shave Taylor Swift's entire body.
What did he say?
I'll then form fit the head into place and make her hand, which it would seem that I did not film. Probably because I didn't expect it to work first time, but it did. In any case, if you're here, you've probably seen sculptors make hands before and complain about it like it literally slapped them. I'll attach said body to the hand and then get started on the hair, which shall fall from the sky, and I'll mark out Taylor's hairline on her already baked head with a pencil before giving her shiny dome a caress with some bacon balm. I can then begin to add the individual noodly doodads for some thick strands of hair. I'll press them in firmly at the root and use a number of tools to experiment as to which gives me the most realistic outcome, well, for now anyway, prior to moving on to the baby blue ball gown. And for said gown, I'll roll out a couple of pieces of flat clay with my acrylic rolling pin and use my little circle cutters to cut out the arms and the neck of the front and the back. I can then delicately add some shoulder straps and connect the two pieces together. Once they're smoothed in a little bit, I'll use my X-Acto blade to trim the fat a little bit and just tidy it up, make it look a little more delicate and elegant. Using the Black Falcon, I'll impress in some much needed texture into the fabric, as per the music video reference. I'll then add some fabric that flows perpendicular to the main body of the dress and give that the same texture. I can then sneak off to the bedroom, try on one of my partner's dresses, and roll around on the ground taking reference photos to get a good idea of how dresses crease and fold. I'll smooth all the folds in with a couple of tools and my trusty index finger returning to the hair to add some final texturing. I was pretty chuffed with how the hair turned out, to be honest, albeit too short, but with a heavy rub down of some alcohol, that's Taylor off to the oven and her final bake. And we're moving on to the snake, which I'll be referring to as Kim for absolutely no reason at all. I'll start Kim off by preparing a double wound steel wire spine, which I can then bend and twist into position that tickles me in just the right way. I'll mount the armature wire to several cork sanding blocks I've glued together with a little wee screw and take a large sausage of clay and roll out a nice snaky shape. You can see here that the clay wasn't quite conditioned enough, which has left me some fibrous innards that haven't bonded, so I'll have to spend a little bit of time going back and making this more malleable. And with that done, I will open Kim up and have a look inside. But wait, what's this? My Lady Galadriel, what devilry has brought you to such a place? I'll then attempt in vain to apply the smooth body that I so lovingly crafted, only to bugger it all up. In any case, I'll rectify the situation as best I can before mocking up a little flatworm to give me an idea of where the separation will be between the upper body scales and the belly scales. And while I'm doing all this stuff above, you let me know in the comment section below, who is your favorite snake from pop culture, movies, cartoons, past, present? My personal favorite is the snake from Anaconda that ate John Voight.
Surprise,
To minimize the fingerprints being left on the body, I'll throw on a nitrile glove and using some tools that have squared off heads, I add the ends of the belly scales. And then lastly, I'll run a larger ball stylus over the center to make them appear less flat and generic. And for the scales on the body, I can promise you now that I will never be a YouTuber to add individual scales. You see, I have a job, and to that end I've made a little scale roller to impress the impression of the roller, but the inverse, and therefore leaving me some pretty convincing time-saving scales. The body can now receive her own wipe down of isopropyl alcohol and we can move on to the head. I'll make the head in two parts, attaching the lower jaw to a pre-arrow shaped head. I'll carve out a couple of wee channels for the lower jaw to fit into the upper jaw at over 90 degrees for maximum aggression. I can apply a layer of clay to the bottom jaw and add some cheek filler, though Kim will tell you that she's all natural. I won't add any clay for the gums as I wanted this to be particularly gummy. I opted to start with an extra large head and carve out the gums that way. To shave back the mouth and make it look a little more organic, I use my little scraping tool. I know it's my favourite because I got that masking tape around the handle there. And once I've got that sufficiently scraped back, I will add some spooky eyebrows. And from here we can smooth all this into the top of the head, leaving it seamless. Then we can add in some extra cheeks, just beefing them up a little bit, giving the face a bit more character, a bit more depth. And I can smoothen the cheeks and give some attention over to the mouth. as a snake's mouth is an absolutely horrifying sight, but très fun to sculpt. I'll stick in a couple of upper gums, followed by some lower gums, and then the glottis, which this is a This is an organ that allows a snake to breathe as it consumes you, and in no way is that horrifying at all. You know what? Overall, I am pretty damn stoked with how this is looking. So from here, I'll go ahead and I will impress in some pre-made eyeballs, check them from the front to make sure that it's all symmetrical. Then I can take them out, and with the impression, I can scoop it out with a little scoopy tool, and I can add in some eyelids, which snakes do not have, but it'll just give it a little something something. And then I can add a couple of nostrils, which snakes only use for oxygenation. They taste by means of a sensor known as Jacobson's organ. This is located on the roof of the mouth, and as a snake tastes the air, it gathers chemicals to smell via its mouth. Isn't nature beautiful and horrifying? I can then attach the heads to the body, and not gonna lie, really not overly chuffed with how this connection turned out. They are two complete different girths, but luckily when you paint it, it's not overly noticeable. And at that connection, I'll take the little scale roller and go over it again, but you can see that connection there, it's awful. Anyway, my shortcomings aside, I will give this snake some lumpy, bumpy texture. Even if snakes do not have this, I am a grown-up and I do what I want. I even pick my own bedtime. And hey, if you like this video and you also got an ad at the start, then feel free to subscribe, because that means that somebody is getting paid for this video, and it sure as hell ain't this fella.
Welcome to the layer cake, son.
You're a monster!
I can quickly shake on a white base coat before temporarily mounting Kim onto an MDF block, checking Taylor's position and marking the base with a pen for future repositioning. I decided pretty early on that I wanted to paint Kim purple for reasons unknown to me, but I can safely surmise that it was for one of the following two reasons. I was either A, watching reruns of Pokemon Indigo League on Netflix and had Arbok on my mind, or B, I was having a très fabulous day, and we all know there's no color more fabulous than purple. Isn't that right, Samuel?
Lightsabers are green or lightsabers are red. Yeah, but I want a purple one.
Purple you shall have. So I used Citadel's Violet contrast paint here, and it didn't work at all. It was really washed out, so I had to go back and use this Warlord purple. Wow, that was difficult, guys. And you can see coming up now just the sheer contrast, the difference that it made. It was quite staggering, but it was definitely well worth it in the end. It really, really made that skin pop. It's not quite dry brushing, but just with a little bit of paint on a makeup sponge in my trusty reverse tweezers, I just dabbed along the entirety of the snake. And you can see here the before and after, and yeah, it's just night and day. I'll then move on to the head and add some edge highlights around the head and the body with a recently purchased paintbrush, as I'm quite a forgettable person. I mean, I'm quite a forgetful person, and brush maintenance is a pretty forgettable task. So with the sponge, I'll add some additional highlights on the crescent of the body as it emerges from the ground, and what I can also assume is the neck. Speaking of which, does a snake have just a head and a body, or does it have a head-body-neck divider somehow defined by internal anatomy? Pour that in your cereal. With a little bit of some redneck DIY lunchbox lid wet palette in place, I'll paint the mouth a nice runny blood red. I'll then decide that my edge highlights were not edge highlighty enough and redo them with an almost dead white. I'll feather the highlights into the scales a little bit, and with Kim looking a little toothless at the moment, and not in the cool way, I think it's time to add in the bottom row of little stabbers and a couple of glorious fangs. I'll paint the overcooked teeth white, and I will add a beautiful sunflower yellow to the eyes. And if this video absolutely tanks as I made a zombie Taylor Swift with a snake, I can always change the title to I made Ekans with a completely random blonde zombie pop star. To finish Kim off, I will coat her in a thin layer of varnish before getting on to painting the real reason that everybody turned up to the Super Bowl this year. I'll begin with a bone white to all the exposed skin areas, followed swiftly by the babiest of baby blues for the gown, and for the hair and the eyebrows I went straight in with a brown wash. What I'm learning about washes is that they always dry lighter than when I apply them, and with that in mind, this brown will actually dry a really nice golden straw colour. I'll give the skin a heavy pink wash and feather the excess away with my brush, and also dab with the sponge to remove the heavier applications, which leaves the heavier paint in the grooves while also removing the top layer. It admittedly looks pretty heavy when it goes on and also kind of terrible, like someone with a fake tan addiction, but none of their friends are brave enough to tell them how terrible they actually look. I use a sharp brush to get into the hairline, dab that away before using the same colour for the mouth. The dress can receive a simple blue wash, and I'll then use a bone white dry brush to go over all the skin to highlight some edges and make our zombie a little more anemic, as her skin was a bit too pink to be a sinister revenant emerging from the earth. Then with a ripped up makeup sponge, I'll apply some dead white highlights to the raised areas all over Taylor and hopefully also highlight her deadness. I can now finally paint the eyes and the teeth, and looking at my hours upon hours of work, I can happily say this 100% looks like Taylor Swift and no one else in the entire world.
You know, I'm something of a
Swiftie
myself.
And with that, we are onto a base. On our previously seen board, I'll map out a series of holes to be drilled. Then with my drill, I shall drill set holes into which I can insert armature wire of varying heights. To keep them in place, I'll drown them with enough glue to worry a horse. I'll then bend them in an outward direction, as I want the snake to have the appearance that she's emerging from the earth and we're only seeing half of her. I'll cover these wires with filler later. I'll do a quick positioning check to make sure it's all fitting accordingly and glue Kim into her final spot, and because I have trust issues, I'll also screw her into her final position, and again, as my trust issues run deep, I'll glue the screw in place. With a little, then a bigger lollipop stick, I'll mix various paints with a hole filler. Of course, I forgot to record this section, so please enjoy this recreation with appropriately painty sound effects. I can then spread this on with all the care and finesse of an Amazon delivery employee before cracking out something new. All game terrain easy bushes. How about a summer pack and a winter pack? And between you and me, I would have loved to have been at that pitch meeting where someone convinced someone else to spend money on seasonal variations of moss.
Sell me this pen.
Speaking of moss, a quick shout out to Kate, the Queen of Moss. No, not that one. Kate Sculpts is a charming little sculptor that has an affinity for fairy tale-esque environments and characters. She also seems to have a strange obsession with moss and actually makes it out of clay. So if you're not already subscribed, go check her out, give her a follow. Get her to 1,000 subs. Meanwhile, I've been haphazardly laying down a carpet of moss, and we'll finish off Taylor and Kim with a small dosing of Mod Podge and a sprinkle of flocking. And to finish this off, we will add some irises with a baby blue to give it that cataracty look, and with a ball stylus dipped in a little bit of black paint, we can add the pupils and then muddy up the eyes with a little bit of a black wash, and I think these girls are ready and we can move on to some headshots.
I'm a snag. I'm a snag.
Big thank you for anybody who hung around this long. Always great to have you by. I know this one took a bit longer than usual, but February was a little bit of a wild ride. Lots of camping, lots of traveling, not a lot of weekends free. But yeah, tuning in this long, like, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff, and until next time, go make a mess.